Petitions for 5 more ballot measures are now going through signature verification to see if they will be on the November ballot. Supporters of issues relating to 2 oil and gas development causes, cigarette and tobacco taxes, and 2 issues relating to primary elections in Colorado all turning in petitions last week. The Secretary of State's office is already working on verification of signatures on petitions for medical aid in dying and requirements for constitutional amendments.
Now, the Secretary of State's office did approve a measure that we now get to vote on in November, deciding if raising Colorado's minimum wage to $12 an hour by 2020. Now, we've talked to supporters before. Well, today we're talking to one of the opponents of this measure. Tyler Sandberg is here from Keep Colorado Working, and we're happy to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
You're saying this is going to be a race to watch in November.
Absolutely. Colorado's voters are very concerned about the unintended consequences. And our position is not that we're opposing a minimum wage increase. Colorado already has a law on the books, and one of the few states that does, where the minimum wage goes up every year with inflation. So we're not opposing a minimum wage increase. What we're concerned about is this minimum wage increase, a 44% minimum wage increase that has a one-size-fits-all. Rural Colorado simply can't afford to pay the same as Cherry Hills Village, Cherry Creek, wealthy areas of Denver and Boulder. So this one-size-fits-all measure is going to be damaging to rural Colorado. It's also damaging to small businesses. While large corporations might be able to weather a 44% increase in costs, small and family-owned businesses simply don't have the profit margins to make it. And so we're worried we're going to see job losses. An independent study found 90,000 jobs to be lost by this. So it's the unintended consequences we're very concerned about, and it hurting the very same low-wage workers that this is intended to help.
Now, in the past, we've talked with a supporter who said that raising the minimum wage would give people more money to spend, increase the economy, meaning more jobs. Why are you saying less jobs? Why are we hearing more jobs from them, less jobs from you?
Sure, it's coming from small business owners. The money has to come from somewhere. It's coming from very hardworking families who run small businesses, and so money's coming out of their pocket that was used to create jobs. So you're going to see the study found 90,000 job losses and actually $3.9 billion in lost wages by 2022. Because you're going to have small businesses in rural areas close down, ones that operate on 3 and 4% profit margins. Many small restaurants, that's what they make. If you see a 44% increase in their labor costs, they may not be able to survive. Most restaurant owners, we asked the State Restaurant Owner Association, 90% said they were going to have to reduce hours, 75% said they're going to have to reduce jobs, 20% said they have to close locations. So we're seeing some serious ramifications to this that's going to hurt the very same people this is supposed to help.
Other states have raised the minimum wage. California, I think restaurant workers make $9 an hour. They've seen a growth in restaurants popping up. So, I mean, how do you...
So there's a recent study on this, on Seattle. Seattle just took their minimum wage from $9.64 to $11.14. And the University of Washington did a study and found that actually, under best case scenarios, workers are only seeing a $5 increase per week in their pay. And under a worst case scenario, they've actually lost $5. And low-wage workers in Seattle are actually working less hours than low-wage workers in restaurants in nearby counties. And they've actually lost their jobs. There are less employed low-wage workers in Seattle now as a result of that. So the workers themselves have been harmed. They may be getting more per hour, but their bosses have had to reduce their hours because these small businesses don't make large profit margins, and it's not fair to have this rule for small businesses. You talk about California and New York, they have off-ramps. If there's a recession, they can slow down the minimum wage increase. It does not exist here because it's a constitutional amendment. In Baltimore, they raised the wage, and employers with less than 50 employees were exempted. So there are all sorts of areas where we can create a much better program for Colorado that they just simply don't have here. In Oregon, they have 3 different minimum wages. One for Portland, one for major counties, one for rural areas. Here we have a one-size-fits-all, and it simply doesn't work for Colorado. It doesn't work for small businesses, and it doesn't work for rural communities.
So instead of a one-size-fits-all, what would work?
If you were able to take into account the difference in cost of living between rural Colorado and Metro Denver. Right now, the minimum wage goes up by the Denver-Boulder-Greeley Consumer Price Index. So it goes up every single year. It's actually gone up 61% in the last 10 years. We have one of the highest minimum wages in the West, and it goes up every single year. So our current system will allow it to raise. If Amendment 70 fails, and we think it should because of small businesses' impact, we're really concerned what happens to them, the minimum wage will continue to increase in Colorado every single year.
If business has succeeded going up 61% over 10 years, why would they not succeed if it goes up another 44%?
They just can't afford another 44%. They've done their best when their revenues have not gone up 61%, but their costs and their payroll have gone up. They've done their best. They want to take care of their employees. These small businesses, their employees are like family. For restaurants, these small business owners are working 7 days a week to make their operation run. It's a whole family operation many times. They're doing the best they can, and they've increased it 61% in the last 10 years. But another 44% would simply just go too far. And there's there's studies to prove this, why going too far can be damaging. The Congressional Budget Office found that if we raised the minimum wage from $7.25 federally, and it's higher in Colorado, to $9, it'd be 100,000 job losses. But if we raised it to $10.10, there'd be 500,000 job losses. So there's a point in which you go too far and you end up having blowback. You end up doing more damage. I think a lot of voters are concerned and want to help raise wages for workers, but they should take a look at this exact measure and see that it's actually going to do more harm than good.
You're talking a lot about small businesses, but there are big businesses that have put money into fighting this campaign. How do you balance that?
Right now, it's a lot of restaurants who's given to us, and so it's a lot. We're sure small businesses. And a $15 meal you pay at a restaurant, the restaurant owner only makes 60 cents pre-tax profit. 60 cents. So where are they going to cover a 44% increase if they're only making 60 cents on a $15 meal? Or you talk to pottery owners on Main Street who have ceramic pottery studios, sporting goods stores. These are places that make really small profit margins. They simply don't have the money to cover a 44% increase.
When we talk about 44%, that's by the end of the
Yes,
raise.
that's going from what it is now to what it will be in 2020. So the measure goes to $12 an hour and does it over the next 3 years.
I would assume that businesses would raise prices.
Yes.
And more. So the argument from the supporters, businesses would raise prices perhaps, people would have more money to spend, it kind of balances out.
Well, it won't, because in rural areas, the customers can't afford higher prices. While the economy may be doing better in Denver, in rural areas it's not. And their customer base won't be able to afford the increased price. And so they're going to see a loss of business, which means they're going to have to lay off workers. So it's all the knock-on effects. You look at childcare. Childcare could go up by 30%. Colorado already has one of the highest childcare costs in the country. It costs about $13,000 a year for a toddler, about $9,000 or $10,000 a year for about a 4-year-old. Those could go up 20 or 30%. So you're talking about a lot of working parents. They're going to see an increase in their cost. And a lot of working families, their child care costs are more than their mortgage or their rent. So you're talking about a lot of working families that are going to be affected here in a way that people wouldn't suspect just by raising the wage. It's those knock-on effects, those unintended consequences that will end up hurting a lot of working families.
Well, we get to let Colorado voters decide on this November 8th, and it's one of the many issues that we will get to vote on.
Tyler Sandberg, thanks for joining.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate your time.
We'll be right back.